Hey, welcome back to the woods for another episode of Uber Grace. Don't forget to please subscribe if you're on the YouTube channel, or please like, comment, share, whatever. Really helps, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on the Facebook page. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about law gone mad, really, I suppose. Right in the beginning, the first story, you're in the Garden of Eden. Eden actually meaning pleasures. And you're in the Garden of Pleasures, and you can just have a great time. Doesn't matter if this story's true or whether it's made up. It's the allegory, it's the meaning we get from it that counts, remember. And they said there were two trees in the garden. One was the tree of life, and one was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Right and wrong, in and out. The binary stuff, you know, the in that stuff. So, obviously mankind, I think every one of us ends up trying to live their life out of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, out of the tree of right and wrong. Particularly as Christians are really good like that. But I think just people generally are really smart at this. And then, as time went on, in the Bible, the story goes on, and the people of Israel end up in slavery in the middle of Egypt. Right, great story. Okay, they're living their life out of the knowledge of good and evil, what's right and wrong, and as a people they end up in slavery. A bit like us as people, we try and work out all the time and try and live out of what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's not, and it kind of ties us in knots until we end up sometimes in a whole other place than we started out, that we meant to go. And then a guy called Moses comes along, way Moses, and does some incredible supernatural stuff, leads them out of slavery. So now they're no longer slaves. What they are, though, is they're wandering around the wilderness. I mean, it's apparently about a 3-day journey if you go from Egypt to Israel, across that little triangular bit called the Sinai Peninsula. But they were there for 40 flipping years, right? 40 years wandering around. And I have to say, there were some amazing spiritual encounters. There were some huge miracles of provision. There were battles won through supernatural, this, that and the other. It was an amazing time. The other thing that happened as well is Moses decided we needed some rules to keep this thing in order. And basically he came up with hundreds of rules. It's become known as the law. Hundreds of these rules to keep these people in line. Basically, what Moses did was he kind of took the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and went on speed with it, right? So he ended up with all this extra stuff that you had to carry. When he died, along comes Joshua. I mean, Joshua's there already, but you know what I mean. Joshua suddenly takes over the whole of the people of Israel, and that's when they start to enter into the promised land. Why am I telling you all this? Because Joshua's name actually is God is salvation. Same as Jesus' name, actually. Joshua is like a westernized version of Jesus, or it comes from an ancient Hebrew version of the modern Hebrew Jesus, whatever. So, or Yeshua is what Jesus was called. And so you've got this whole new thing where God is my salvation, rather than trying to read by the rules and trying to live by what's right and what's wrong. Now, you might want to pick me up because I said Moses came up with all these rules. But if you go into John chapter 1, there's a really excellent bit where John, one of the fathers of the church, allegedly had this close relationship with Jesus. He was part of the inner circle, and he said the law came from Moses. Grace and truth came from Jesus Christ. In other words, the law ain't truth. The law ain't true. All that stuff, rubbish. Don't need it. Okay, now a lot of Christians today, I've discovered, more and more, are really into treating that law as if it's something we need to be living today. Absolute rubbish. A lot of it was to help you get through a desert thousands of years ago. Why do we need that now, you know? So along comes God is my salvation. Wowzers, what is salvation? Well, salvation is healing and wholeness and freedom. And so they enter into the promised land. And it's a whole other ball game, because they were told it was a land flowing with milk and honey. And if you know the story, you know there wasn't a lot of milk and a lot of honey going on in the next few books of the Bible when they're trying to establish themselves in this land. But there's a lesson there for us too, because Jesus' big message, as somebody who was God is my salvation, was change the way you think. And I might have said this before in these videos once or twice, but it is absolutely crucial. We need to change the way we think, because the kingdom of heaven is within us. Oh yeah, it's not out there. It's not what you can taste and drink and eat. It's about power and love. It's about incredible stuff that's within us that needs to be released from within. And that's where we need to change our perception. So as we're going out of this legalistic law kind of lifestyle, we ought to be thinking a little bit more about what we perceive with our inner eyes, really. I mean, what we see around us may be a bit mucky and miserable and stuff, but actually we can change the way we think about those things and actually see it flowing with milk and honey. We can actually see ourselves as rise, mighty warrior, take courage, for the Lord is with you. Things like that. Maybe it feels like the Lord ain't with you no time soon. But actually, if you start to think in the way of, no, the Lord is with me. He'd never leave me or forsake me. He is here all the time. Then you can start to tackle some of these things in your life because, hey, it's in you. Just release it. So what I want to challenge you with a little bit today to think about really is, where are you on this journey? Are you still in some kind of bondage, not a good word to use these days, but you know, some kind of slavery, slave to relationships, slave to alcohol, slave to drugs, slave to religion, slave to church? Are you that sort of slave? Or have you been able to be led out and set free? But actually, is that freedom from captivity still a legalistic captivity? There are still churches today that have got amazing ministries, and the miracles and the signs and the prophetic words and the wisdom is really profound, and yet they will lock you into the tree of the knowledge of good and evil on speed, as sure as anything. And you need to get to yourself to a place where you're starting to walk out of that into the promised land, into a place where in your head you've got the promises, and that is the land that you walk in. Hey, you have a great day, and I hope to see you soon. This has been Uber Grace. Have a great day. Bye now.